Tell you what, looking at some of these can sure get confusing. If you're a little bit confused when it comes to electrical schematics, well then stay tuned because this episode's for you. Hello, my name is Hector Velazquez and welcome to another episode of GCSAA Inside the Shop. Continuing our education on electrical series, the next step is how to read a schematic diagram. Now, before we go finding whatever's wrong with our equipment when it comes to electrical, we really need to be able to understand what these mean and what they're trying to tell you. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing your tail around that piece of equipment, trying to figure out what's wrong with that electrical equipment. Why your lights are not coming on. Why is that PTO switch not working? Well, to find all this out, this is going to tell us what that whole rat's nest is all about. So, let's go ahead and simplify the schematic diagram. Okay, so one of the first things we want to do is get ourselves familiarized with some of the symbols that have to do with schematic diagrams. Here's starting off with simple that you're going to typically see on almost every schematic. Here we have a line that represents the wire. When they're crossing, that means that those wires are unconnected. Also, this is another way that you might see it with the dash crossing over. A lot of times we'll see the loop over. That means these wires are not connected. When you see the dot, right, that right there, then you know that these two wires are connected along the line. Here's a symbol for ground. This is one that we're going to see a lot, and this is a symbol right here for battery, or you might just see the battery itself. And then here we have a one for relay. So these are some of the symbols, right, that you want to get yourself familiar with. The easiest way to do this is you want to just get online, find something like this, and just print it out and always have it either, taped to your toolbox or somewhere along the bench where you're always looking at it, and you just kind of start familiarizing yourself with these things. Okay, so now let's take a look at a schematic. Now, it looks kind of crazy, right? But don't let that bother you too much, because right away we're going to start recognizing some of the symbols that we just talked about, right? Here's our battery. Here's our ground that goes from our battery. We can see the wire, right? The line that leads to ground. So we know that the wire that comes off this negative side wire goes to ground. Take a good look, a glance over your schematic, kind of get yourself familiarized with the components, right? Here's the ignition switch. Over here we have an hour meter, and you can see a lot of these schematics already kind of label that stuff for you. Here's the ignition switch here. What issues are you having? So let's just say this SAM Pro is not starting, right? We're not getting any power. We might hear a click from the solenoid. So where do we start? Well, we want to start at the battery. First of all, we want to verify that we have a good battery. You want to make sure you got 12 volts from the negative and positive. We test the battery, we got 12 volts. Then the next place I'm going to go to, right, I'm going to check my starter solenoid. So I'm going to follow this red wire that goes from the battery, and I notice it's taking me to the starter solenoid. Now let's just keep following that wire. From there, it's going to come over here. As you can see, we've recognized that loop, right? That means it's not connecting. So we're going to come up, and right away we're going to see, oh wait, we have a fuse that's connected to that circuit. This is going to come back. It's a red wire over, and that's going to go to our ignition switch. Here we have a starter solenoid, and we have these two little leads here that energize the solenoid. Comes off a harness. One wire is gray, the other one is green. Here's a gray wire. We know that gray wire right here leads to a neutral switch. So now we want to make sure that that neutral switch is in the closed position, right, to make connection to ground and complete the circuit. So maybe our foot pedal, forward and reverse, maybe that's not exactly activating or closing that switch. So we can check that to make sure that this is getting energized. We have this green wire that also goes from the switch that comes down to the solenoid, makes connection there. That's going to energize our solenoid, which is going to close this circuit right here. We have the other red wire on the other side of the post of the solenoid that's going to come over here, and we're going to follow that, and that leads to the starter. So we want to check that.